Okay, guys, welcome to week 7. Um, we're going to be going over our Algebra 1 prep on distributive property and solving multi-step equations. That's 8.8C and 8.5A. So just as it says, we're going to continue trying to get y'all ready for Algebra 1 next year. This is it's not too difficult, but it is going to require your attention in these videos, and follow along, and then to make sure you're taking it step by step. Okay, so just to backtrack real quick, do a little 6th grade review. We're going to talk about our integer rules. So integer rules, remember, we can add, subtract, multiply, divide integers. Just remember that when you're adding integers, if they have the same sign, okay, so if they're both positive or they're both negative, then you're going to add and you're going to keep the sign. Okay, so if I add 2 negatives, I'm going to keep a negative. If I'm adding 2 positives, I'm going to keep the positive. If they're different signs, you're going to subtract and take the sign of the larger absolute value. Okay, so if I'm adding a -5 and a 9, well, I'm going to subtract them, which is going to give me 4. And my bigger integer is 9, and it's a positive, so it's going to be a positive 4. Same thing here. If I'm adding -13 and 8, I'm going to subtract them, and I'm going to get 5. The bigger number is 13, and it's a negative, so I'm going to keep the sign of negative. Okay. If I'm going to subtract, I'm going to change to addition and then do the opposite. So if I have -3 minus positive 4, then I'm going to just change the subtraction to addition, and then I'm going to do the opposite of the right side of that. So it would be -3 plus -4, because the opposite of positive is negative. Okay. -5 minus -9, I'm going to leave the -5. I'm going to change it to addition, and I'm going to do the opposite. So the opposite of -9 is plus. Yes, I understand you can do this in your calculators, but it's still important for us to know and remember these. Okay. When we're multiplying and dividing, they're a little easier, because when you multiply and divide, you multiply and divide the numbers, the integers, just as you would any other number. Okay. If they have the same sign, it's going to stay positive. If they're different signs, then it's going to be negative. Okay. So here's some practice for you. Okay. So of course, -6 plus 9. So I'm adding, and they're opposite. So I'm going to subtract. So 6 minus 9 is going to give me 3. The bigger number is 9. It's positive, so it's staying positive 3. Okay. Same thing here. I have 5 minus 9. Well, they're opposite, so I'm going to subtract them. So 5 minus 9 is 4. And the bigger number is a -9. Okay. Or I could just leave the 5, change this to addition, and make this opposite, which would be negative. Okay. And then, of course, the bigger number is a negative, so it's a -4. Multiply, divide. Again, you just multiply, divide just as you would. You're just going to, if it's the different sign, it's going to be a negative number. So this is -5 times 7. So they're opposite. So I'm going to do 5 times 7, and then it's the opposite. So it's going to be a negative answer. Same thing here. I'm dividing 18 divided by -6. They're opposite. So I'm going to divide 18 by 6, which is 2. But because they're opposite, it's going to be negative. Okay. So this is just for some practice, just to kind of refresh back what we were doing in 6th grade. Distributive property. So distributive property allows us to get rid of the parentheses by bringing a multiplication from the outside to the inside of the parentheses. Okay. So if I have A, and then I have parentheses times B plus C, then I'm going to get rid of these parentheses by distributing the outside integer into the 2 inside. So what I would do is I would do A times B and A times C. Well, when I combine A and B, I have AB. When I combine A and C, I have AC, and I keep the sign that's between the two. So it's an addition. So AB plus AC. So this right here is the same thing as this. The only thing I did was distributive property. Okay, and that's going to be important when we get to our multi-step equations. Okay, so we got to know how to do this. Now you can also do it backwards, as you see here. Okay, it could be to the right side of the parentheses, and the same thing applies. A times C, A times B, and I keep the addition. So A times C, okay, is going to be CA, okay, and then A and B is going to be BA, and you keep the addition, okay. Um, this is just one that you just need to do some practice with, which we'll do down here, just to get the hang of it. So let me switch up the color here. So right here, I have 5x plus 2. I'm going to combine my 5 with my x and with 2. Okay. So when I distribute the 5 times x, well, x is a variable. So I don't know what x is. So all I'm going to do is write 5 times x or 5x. 5 times 2, well, I know that 5 times 2 is 10. So I would have 5x plus 10. So this and this are the same thing. That's what distributive property is. Okay. Um, let's go down to this one here. I have 2 parentheses 4x plus 3. I'm going to distribute the 2 to the 4x and to the 3. Well, when I multiply 2 times 4x, well, yes, I do have a variable, so I cannot touch the x. It's going to stay attached, but I do have a constant attached to it, which is a 4. So I can multiply 2 times 4. And 2 times 4 is 8, right? So I'm going to write 8x, and then 2 times 3 is 6. So I'm going to be, when I distribute, I'm going to have 8x plus 6. Okay. Again, I know that it's just taking practice. Okay. So just follow along and distribute it one by one, and you'll be fine. That's why we have this practice here for you. Negative 3, I'm going to distribute to 5x minus 6. Okay. So negative 3 times 5x. Again, I do have a constant, so I could do negative 3 times 5. Well, remember we're talking about an integer rules. If we're multiplying, multiply as normal. 3 times 5, which is 15. And if they're opposites, it's going to be a negative, right? So it's going to be negative 15x. Okay, I brought my x with me. And then negative 6 times negative, negative 3 times negative 6. Well, remember, they're the same. So if they're the same, even though they're both negative, it's going to be a positive. So what's 3 times 6? 18. But because they're both negative, it's going to be a positive, which is why I wrote positive right here. And then I'll just write my 18. So the distributive property of this one would be negative 15x plus 18. Okay. So hopefully you're kind of getting that. Just continue doing that. But you have it's broken down for you here anyway to help you have that guidance. Okay. Um, okay. So let's continue down. Okay. Now here's the other part. Combining like terms. Well, combining like terms, just as it sounds, you're putting terms together that are the same. So let's just say, look at this picture right here, just so that we can understand. Okay. Um, I'm going to combine, it says, I have 2 burgers, some fries, and a drink. And I'm going to add 3 burgers, 2 fries, and 2 drinks. Okay. Well, I cannot combine things that don't go with each other. So if I'm going to combine these all together, okay, I can only combine them with the same item. So if I have 2 burgers on this side and I have 3 burgers over here, well, I can only combine the burgers by themselves. So when I combine them, I have 5 burgers, and that gets rid of my burgers. Now I want to combine my fries. Well, I have 1 over here, and I have 2 over here. So when I combine them, I have 3 fries in total. So that gets rid of my fries. And now I'm going to combine my drink. Well, I have 1 here and I have 2 over here. When I combine them, I have 3 drinks, right? And that, so now instead of having this all scattered, I've combined my like terms to get 5 burgers, 3 fries, and 3 drinks. Okay. So, and again, just like the distributive property, it's just going to be one of those where you're going to have to take it step by step. Okay. Break it down and really look at your equation in total to be able to combine your terms, your like terms correctly. Okay. So let's look down here at some of these examples. So they want us to simplify, basically combine like terms. So here I have 3x plus 9 plus 5x equals 8x plus 9. Okay, so I want to combine my like terms. Well, notice that on the left side of this of the equal sign, I have 2 different x's, but they're both x. Okay, they both have the same variable. So if they both have the same variable, they can be combined because they are like terms. So therefore, all I'm going to do is add the consonant. So 3 and 5. What is 3 plus 5? Right, 8. So I'm going to rewrite this as 8x. My 9, it's the only one there, so I'm going to leave that alone. Plus 9 equals, and then I have 8x on the other side plus 9. Okay? So notice, all I did was combine the 3x and the 5x together to get 8x plus 9. I simplified it, or combine like terms. Let's look over here. On this next one, I have negative 5x plus 8 plus 2x plus 10. Okay, so I have 2 sets of like terms. I have my x's, negative 5x and 2x, and then I also have my constants or my integers of 8 and 10. So I'm going to combine this with this and this with this. Okay. It doesn't matter which one you do because we are adding. So with addition, okay, there is no, it doesn't matter which order you do it. Okay. So when I combine the negative 5 and the 2, well, remember, my integer rules, I'm adding and the terms are not like terms. I have a negative and I have a positive. So that means I'm going to subtract, right? So what's 5 minus 2? That's going to be 3. And which number is bigger, the 5 or the 2? Right, the 5. And is that a negative or a positive? Negative. So guess what? I'm going to keep the sign of the bigger number, which is negative. So when I combine negative 5x and 2x, I'm left with negative 3x. Okay, so that's why we started with those integer rules. It all kind of trickles down. So I have negative 3x when I combine them. Now I have to combine my integer of 8 and 10. Now they're both positive, so I'm just going to add as normal. So for sure, I'm going to have an addition sign here. And 8 plus 10 is 18. Yeah. And that's what we're doing here. Again, just like the distributive property, it's just one of those things you're going to have to take it step by step. break it down, okay? Identify your like terms, and then go ahead and combine them one at a time. Okay, so it's just going to be one of those, going to take some practice. Okay, and again, you'll see right now why all of this together is going to, we really need to understand this. So take your time with these first two pages. Okay, make sure that you're understanding it and you're getting it before you move on, because if you just jump to that last part, you're going to struggle. So let's get to what we end up actually doing with all this together and how this will apply to our algebra 1. So down here, this right here is what we're going to be seeing and having to do in algebra 1. Okay, so do you have a calculator in algebra 1? Yes. Do we want you to rely on that and math solver? No, because there's going to be other things that are going to come into play that you need to know how to do. You're going to need to know how to do this by hand. Okay, so we're trying to get y'all prepared, and so I really want you all to try and do this by hand. Okay, yes, you can use your calculator to do your simple, computation. That's fine. Add, subtract, multiply, divide, but do it step by step. And again, take your time. Okay, identify like terms, combine like terms, do distributive property if need be, and then solve for it. Okay, so let's look here. We do have some parentheses, so we'll have to do some distributive property here. Okay, but then we also have like terms. So I have 6C and I have 5C. So we will have to be doing both. But first, we're going to do distributive property because this 5C is going to change once I distribute. Okay, so remember I have 2, so I'm going to distribute the 2 with the 5C and then the 2 with the 1. Okay, so that's the first thing I'm going to do, distributive property. So when I combine, when I distribute, okay, what is 2 times 5? 10. So I have 10C. Okay. When I distribute the 2 and the 1, what's 2 times 1? 2. And I have an addition sign in there, so I'm going to leave the addition sign. Okay, so I have 10C plus 1, and we bring the rest of the equation with me, plus 6C equals negative 14. So, okay, so now I have to combine my like terms. I have 10C and I have 6C. So what is 10 plus 6? Right, 16. So 16C plus 1 equals negative 14. So now I have done distributive property and I've combined like terms to now have my equation, my simplified equation, which is 16C plus 1 equals negative 14. And this is a simple two-step equation. Okay, and we reviewed that on last week. So if we were able to, get that practice in and remember and able to do it, then we're going to be fine at this point. But we got to be able to understand the distributive property and the combined and like terms first. So now that I have this, all I'm going to do is first I'm going to get rid of my constant, which is positive 1. What's the opposite of, or the inverse of positive 1 or plus 1? Negative 1. Let me change colors here. Negative 1. So plus 1 minus 1, that zeroes out. What I do to one side of the equal sign, I need to do to the other side. So I'm going to do minus 1 over here. Negative 14 minus 1. Again, I am integer rules. Okay, I'm going to change this to addition, and I'm going to do the opposite. Okay, so what's negative 14 plus negative 1? Negative 15. Okay, and I'm left with 16C on the other side. Now remember that when I have my integer attached to my variable, it's understood that there's an imaginary dot in between that means multiplication, and the opposite of multiply is divide. So I'm going to divide by 16. 16 divided by 16 is going to give me 1. So now I have 1C, but I don't need to write it. And then when I do the one side, I need to do the other side. So when I do negative 15 divided by 16. Okay. Now, if you put this in the calculator, it's going to give you a decimal. Okay. But it's already simplified. Okay. So you can leave it as negative 15 divided by 16. That's already the simplified version of it. Okay, now if you want to put it in the calculator, write the decimal, that's fine. You can do that too if you want. But C equals negative 15 divided by, or negative 15 over 16. So that's where I got. From this, I got to here. This part is the familiar part for you all. Okay. The only thing is we're incorporating the distributive property and the combined and like terms, which is not difficult, but it does take some practice, which is why we set it up the way we set it up. Okay, so make sure that you take your time this week, okay, before you get to this part. And if you need to go back to remind yourself or to practice or see how you did distributive or the like terms, combining like terms, then do that. Okay, I'll just do one more with y'all just to kind of give you that extra example. But remember, your teachers are having a lot more thorough, broken down videos. Okay, so make sure that you're also referring to those videos. Okay, especially if you're struggling. Okay, so right here, I have distributive property. Okay, and of course, I have like terms. Okay, so what am I going to do first? Yep, distributive property. So I'm going to distribute the 5 with the 3x and the 5 with the minus 5. Okay, so 5 times 3 is 15x. 5 times negative 5, well, they're opposites. So 5 times 5 is 25. And because they are opposite, my answer is going to be negative. So I'm going to put the minus. Okay, and then I have minus 10x. And oh, I didn't catch that. You see, that's why we gotta take our time with this. There's also a like term in the 6 and in the 5. Now, once we distribute it, it's actually 25 and 6. But so I have two sets of like terms. I have my x's and I have my integers. Okay, so I need to combine those two. So 15 plus negative 10. Okay, integer rule, opposite. Okay, and I'm adding. I'm going to subtract, right? So I have 5x, and which is the bigger number? The 15. So it's positive, so it stays positive. So 5x. Now I'm going to combine negative 25 and 6. Again, integer rule. I'm going to subtract them. Okay. Or I could subtract. I could change it to addition, right? Oh, actually, no, it is addition. I'm sorry. Negative 25 plus 6. Okay, so I'm going to subtract, which is going to be 19. And which is the bigger number? The negative 25. So it's going to stay negative. Or I could just put it minus 19. So once I distributed my property and once I combine my like terms, I'm left with 5x minus 19 equals to 1. Okay. And now I finally have my two-step equation, which now I just need to solve. So first thing I'm going to do is get rid of what's on the away from the variable, which is my minus 19. The opposite of minus is addition. So I'm going to add 19. This is going to cancel out. What I do to one side, I'm going to do to the other side. So what is 1 plus 19? I'm going to get 20. Bring down my equal sign and bring down my variable, which is 5x. Good. And then I have one step left. Now remember, there's an imaginary dot. That means to multiply. The opposite of multiply is divide. So I got to divide this by 5. 1 divided by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. So now I have my 1x equal. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So what is 20 divided by 5? Right? 4. So x equals 4. Okay? So I hope this has helped. Okay, I hope that we're able to get through this week. Again, take your time with it. Refer to your other teachers' videos for further assistance or a lot more broken down video. And keep doing what you're doing, guys. You're doing awesome. And like we said, this is gonna help prepare you for next year. It's important that you really try. Okay, because it's gonna help you so that you are not behind next year. Okay. Good job. Keep the work. Good work. Take care.